Hello, everyone, and thank you for sticking with us for day one of the NAM's Healthy Longevity Global Innovator Summit. My name is Michelle Toplitz, and I am the Program Director of our Healthy Longevity Global Grand Challenge. So in this next session, I will share a bit more about the NAM's US-based Catalyst Award competition, and then welcome one of our exceptional Catalyst Award winners, Stephen Downs, to share his innovative and multidisciplinary work. While all of the Catalyst Award competitions have some common elements, the NAM's US-based competition is unique in some respects. From the beginning, this was envisioned as a prize as opposed to a traditional grant. The prize is awarded for an idea, for an innovative, bold idea to extend the human health span, and it's intended as seed money to help advance the idea. In terms of the types of ideas NAM has considered, we really have looked for outside the box, potentially transformative innovations, especially those that aim to challenge existing paradigms or propose new methods. The design of the global competition was interested in capturing bold ideas, particularly ones that might be high risk, but could also yield high rewards if they worked out. Our competition has funded ideas and early stage projects from a very wide range of disciplines, and we've been open to supporting projects that pertain to different life stages, including reproductive longevity and equality, provided that there is a clear connection made to health as we age. Our application narrative is only 2 pages long and consists of 2 parts. So first, Part 1, explain your idea and why it's innovative and potentially transformative. And Part 2, explain how you would test and implement your idea. The opportunity has been open to virtually anyone, any individual, any institution, and we have incorporated venture capitalists and entrepreneurs into our broader review process and consider their perspectives really invaluable. So in terms of our review process, again, this is another area where there is some commonality across the Catalyst Award competitions, particularly the strong focus on innovation. The NAM evaluation process consists of several steps, including a couple of unique elements that I thought would be nice to spotlight here. So in our innovation review step, reviewers receive a certain number of applications to score independently, along with a maximum number of gold, silver, and bronze stars that they can issue across their set of assigned applications. Each reviewer, for example, only has 1 gold star to award, and a specific number of silver and bronze stars. And the gold star is awarded to a singularly innovative application or idea. Most of the applications that come across a reviewer's desk will be deemed as do not fund. In the final selection committee step, uniquely, we convene a panel of approximately 15 multidisciplinary experts with expertise that reflects kind of the broad array of finalist applications. And we ask those members to independently rank order their top 10 submissions from a finalist pool of about 30. So the NAM team takes all of that information. We calculate the weighted scores from those rankings. And those selection committee members were actually considering the previous review data from the subject matter expert review and the innovation review earlier. So we take all of those weighted scores and we use those to inform our final selections that are ultimately made by the co-chairs of our selection committee. Overall, as you can see, this process is quite different than a traditional grant review. So by the numbers, the NAM has administered its US-based Catalyst Awards during all 6 annual rounds since we first launched this initiative. We have received on average 500 applications a year, with the most by far in 2025. We received over 660 applications. And this throughout has been a very competitive process. The success rate has ranged from 3 to 5% each year. And over the last 6 years, we have issued 122 Catalyst Awards to US-based teams. So that's over $6 million that we have dispersed just to US-based individuals and teams under our Catalyst Award competition. One of our desired areas of impact for this initiative in general is expanding the field of healthy longevity. And one way that we have done that is to attract and reward early career professionals. Some of the information that we gather when folks apply to our competition, we can say on average about 40% of winning principal investigators have self-identified as early career, which we think is a great indicator. Of our 122 awardees, 5 of those went on to receive more substantive funding in the form of an Accelerator Award from Johnson & Johnson Innovation. And those opportunities were made available in 2021 and 2022. And we look forward to catching up with those awardees later this year to see how their work has progressed. Here at the NAM, we have dedicated significant effort to developing feature stories and otherwise promoting our awardees, their projects, their personal stories. And you can read many of these in the news section of our global competition website, healthylongevitychallenge.org. So moving forward for the remainder of the session, I would love to bring in, as I mentioned, one of our stellar NAM Catalyst awardees who is doing truly innovative work. I'm pleased to have Stephen Downs join us today. He's the co-founder of Building H and Catalyst awardee from 2023. So welcome, Steve.
Now off mute. Nice to be here. Thanks very much for having me. Pleasure to talk with everyone.
Yes, so appreciative of you taking the time. I guess to start off, could you tell us a bit about you, your background, professional journey that led you to co-found Building H?
Yeah, absolutely. So Building H is a research and advocacy organization that is dedicated to making everyday life healthy by design. And there are a few steps that took me there over time. I actually have a pretty multidisciplinary background. I was originally trained in physics, then actually got a master's in technology and public policy, which is sort of an interdisciplinary program to begin with. Then I worked for many years in public health, really sort of at the intersection of health and technology. I started first at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, then some years at the U.S. Commerce Department, and then ultimately a good long stretch at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which is a major U.S. foundation focused on improving health. So there are a couple key steps, I think, in the journey that led to the founding of Building H. One was that working at RWJF for Robert Wood Johnson Foundation on big systemic issues like childhood obesity led us to really see the complexity of the issues and especially try to understand the upstream causes. Sort of what were the root causes, the fundamental reasons behind problems like that. And that work led us to look at the influences that sectors outside of health and healthcare have on people's health. So that was one key piece of it, that perspective. Another was that, 7, 8 years ago, I was having conversations with Thomas Getz, a colleague of mine, a friend who actually had been working in Silicon Valley in digital health. And we were talking a lot about sort of the relatively disappointing impact we were seeing in digital health. And we had both been very big proponents of it, very much a part of it. And digital health, I think, has largely been this idea that if people have more information about their health and about their sort of day-to-day health behaviors, they would somehow be empowered to get healthier. And we weren't seeing as much of that as we'd hoped, and certainly not on a population scale. And we stepped back and thought about it a little bit, and we said, geez, if you think about a product like Fitbit, it tells you how many steps you need to take, but it doesn't make it any easier to take them, right? Putting it perhaps in a more contemporary product, an Oura ring can tell you about your length of sleep and your sleep quality last night, but it can't make the financial worries that keep you up at night go away. It can't change the fact that you might have a 45-minute driving commute back and forth to work each day, or that your breakfast is something you have to pick up at the drive-thru. So the epiphany we had then was that a lot of what was going on in digital health was about small technologies helping people try to overcome the impact of really big technologies, that the technologies that really create the environments that shape our health behaviors. And when I mean big technologies, I'm talking about cars and televisions and smartphones and food processing techniques. But then for me personally, the really big epiphany came when Thomas got me to read a book by Daniel Lieberman called The Story of the Human Body. And Lieberman is an evolutionary biologist, and he argues that the reason that we see so much chronic disease today in such large numbers is because of this fundamental mismatch between how evolution has shaped us and the modern world we've built. So that in effect, we are genetically maladapted to modern life. And that's kind of a big deal. And so we felt like we had to do something about it. And so we founded Building H to change this dynamic, to change the dynamic where new technologies come along and then they are integrated into new products and services that too often have the effect of making it harder and harder for people to be healthy. So this is a huge challenge. It's sort of an insanely huge challenge. But we needed to start with something concrete, which was to really examine closely and measure the influence on people's health behaviors that popular products and services were having. And then ultimately, we actually publish a rating and ranking of a lot of these popular products on how they impact 5 user behaviors. So how much people eat, or not how much, how well they eat, how much sleep they get, how much physical activity, their social engagement, and actually how much time they spend outdoors. So that's sort of the journey to getting to Building H. But you're probably wondering what's the connection to longevity at this point. And I think this is sort of where we've taken a very different tack. I think as we all know, a lot of the work on longevity, including through this wonderful program, is highly scientific and very sort of biomedically focused, right? We're about trying to find medical breakthroughs and therapies that can slow or reverse the aging processes and thereby extend life. We take a much simpler approach, or simply it's maybe just very different, but which is about how do you create a society that supports healthy living so that we don't die prematurely of diet-related illnesses, where we get enough physical activity so that as we age, we're strong and capable, and where we're not burdened by having multiple chronic diseases by the time we turn 60. So that's sort of our take on longevity and sort of why we've undertaken this in that frame.
Thank you. That is such helpful background. I really like the idea of getting at the systemic issues that affect health. But you're right, it is so complex. So super interesting to hear your journey professionally and kind of how you came to found Building H. Can you tell us a little bit more about the specific idea or the project for which you won the NAM Catalyst Award in 2023?
Yeah, so we came across some work at Harvard Business School on measuring corporate social impact. And this has been an interesting field over the number of years, right? It's sort of gone up and down, but I think that a lot of time there was this emphasis on corporations doing good things and being able to sort of tout their charitable work and that sort of thing. But the folks at HBS actually said we should rigorously measure their societal impacts. So let's actually look at what their impact of their products and processes are on the environment. Let's look at the impact on the lives of workers in the supply chain, and let's quantify, sort of those impacts. And this was exciting to us. And what we wanted to do is say, could we build on some of the work that they've done, some of the techniques they've used, and actually look at some of the products and services that we've been analyzing in terms of their impact on people's health behaviors, and go beyond sort of a scoring system that we have and really try to calculate societal costs and benefits in dollars and cents. And so that's what was sort of the genesis of the project. And then we got with a close collaborator of ours, Sarah Singer, at Stanford, and we said, can we maybe test this approach? Can we sketch out a way to do these calculations, and then prototype that approach on a small number of companies to try to see what we come up with, and really sort of as a proof of concept, right? But ultimately, what it is saying, can we develop estimates, sort of financial estimates that tie the impact of a product on the behavior of users at a population level to then increases or decreases in the likelihoods of developing certain chronic conditions, and then also link the prevalence and the treatment costs associated with those chronic conditions, and come up with a number. And maybe a way to illustrate this is, you take a fast food chain and you can start to do some calculations about the nutrition that is associated with the meals there. You can get a sense of its population impact in terms of, sort of what percentage of the American diet it's responsible for based on things like calories. And then you can look at things like, well, if the diet is very high in sodium, what do we know about the impact of a high sodium diet on the likelihood of uh, cardiovascular disease or hypertension? And so we're able to do that kind of calculation to sort of come up with again, fairly rough estimates of the impact on society due to certain products and services from some companies.
Wow, that is fascinating and so complex, but I'm very interested to hear how it's gone thus far and kind of what progress you've made, if you've encountered challenges you didn't expect, or anything else you'd like to share about the journey thus far.
Yeah, so it has been daunting actually, and and I think uh, part of it is sort of a synthetic process, right? There's some original research in it, but a lot of it is about gathering information from different sources, going through the scientific literature to see what studies are out there that are usable, in this context, gathering data on disease prevalence and disease cost and that sort of thing. But I think what we have not finished, in the sense of we are still working on an academic publication, and we're getting ready to be able to release some case studies on this. But I think what we've shown is that you can actually do this, right? You can sort of pull these things together and come up with some initial estimates that I think are quite plausible and defensible. There are gaps in information, to be sure, in terms of what do we know about, so for example, for a fast food restaurant, we can try to infer the kinds of meals that are being bought there. And we have a lot of data about what's in each meal. And we have overall sales data and that sort of thing, but there are gaps, and so we have to make some inferences. Um, the literature is uneven in terms of, we look for really high quality meta-analyses where people pull together lots of studies on, let's say, the relationship between sodium and cardiovascular disease. And so we'll gather things like that, but there are a lot of areas where we say, there's really hasn't been a great study that connects this behavior to the risk of this disease. So there's issues like that. Even things like the cost of treating certain diseases. It's not like there's an annual estimate that comes out every year from a government bureau. Every so often someone will do a study and try to calculate that, and then you sort of pull from that, and then try to adapt for inflation and that sort of thing. But I think we're enthusiastic about the results. And again, the most important thing is that I think we're showing that this is possible. But also, when you do that, I think what we're doing is we're doing it in a way that's very extensible. So people can look at what we're doing and say, oh, I could apply that to these products. Or actually, I know better research on this question and could plug that research into this model. Or I have a better technique for adapting the cost calculations. So we're really excited to get it out there so that others can be inspired by it and then hopefully build on it and make it even better.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is your end goal with this, or what do you want to happen? How do you want folks to use this?
Yeah, so I think the goals are on different levels. So I think from a sort of societal change and policy perspective, I think being able to assign some level of accountability to individual corporations for what I think has traditionally been seen as sort of a collective industry problem, I think is important. So in other words, it's one thing to say, oh, fast food is probably not good for a lot of people. We ought to do better about it. It's another to say we've calculated that this company, is costing the American people, X $100 million a year in healthcare costs. And I think that creates some interesting policy opportunities. And then on another level, I think, our hope is that this kind of work can inspire others to refine it. It can be actually interestingly used for sensitivity analysis. So, for example, a company could say, well, what if we reduced the sodium in our meals by about 10%? What would the impact on society be if we did that? So I think that's an interesting application. And then I think, when I've talked about this publicly among researchers, what I think, well, part of what I hear is that this is an interesting way to think about where our research could land. So in other words, when they're doing a study, the kind of study that we might integrate into a model like this, they start getting excited about how do we do that study in a way that's most useful for this kind of synthesis. And so I think it creates an interesting organizing principle for some research as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the different tiers of the goals. Interesting about how that the sensitivity analysis could actually uncover that small changes have the potential to have big societal impact. So hopefully we can help Building H uplift this work, and please keep us, in the loop once your paper gets published. Very interested to read that. I guess in the remaining few minutes, I'd love to ask you more about how, in particular, the Catalyst Award has helped this work move forward. Is this something that you would have done without the award? And how did you actually use the funds?
Yeah, so it has been. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to do it without it. I think this was an idea that we had, and we wanted to see, where might we be able to fund it. And you know, as I think a lot of folks know, funding tends to be very categorical and very specific. And this work is interdisciplinary. It's very fundamental and upstream. It's applied research or research synthesis rather than original research. It's not population specific. So a lot of things that tend to be it just doesn't fit into a lot of categorical funding. And so to have an open, flexible competition where we could just say, here's what we want to do. It's at the early stage, and we want to do a proof of concept, was an amazing opportunity. And you don't see a lot of those. And so it really enabled us to do the work on this and sort of have the cycles, have the bandwidth and the support to actually do that work.
That's great. I'm so happy that the Catalyst Award kind of facilitated that, because this project seems so important, and I'm very excited to see where it leads in the future. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak about the project and about Building H more generally, and your innovation journey and your professional kind of trajectory here. I think it's of great interest to a lot of our innovators that maybe have taken an unexpected path to arrive at, the project that they've put forward and won our award for. So really appreciate your time, and good luck with everything moving forward, and fingers crossed for that publication. But thanks so much.
Thank
And
you.
thanks.
I was going to say it's a real honor to be part of the program.
Oh, thank you. And everyone, please, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come back in a few minutes for our next segment, which is a panel on healthy longevity across the life course. So please stay tuned. Thank you.